Welcome to Jesus Changes Everything, a daily podcast dedicated to providing a fresh look at the ancient and glorious truth that Jesus not only reigns, but is busy about the business of bringing all things under subjection, that celebrates the wonder and the glory that he has been given all authority in heaven and on earth. Is there some sort of rules about legitimate age gaps among friends? As I was thinking about my forever friends today, I came up with today's forever friend who, when I was able to spend time with him, was probably more than 10 years younger than me, and I was in my 20s. And yet, when I look back, I see him as a friend. His name is A.J. Cochet. Now, if you have been a faithful listener for these many years with the Jesus Changes Everything podcast, you may recall that I've done a Heroes You Never Heard Of about Alan Cochet, and another Heroes You Never Heard Of about Miss Anne Cochet. The two of them had 3 children. Elizabeth was the oldest, and Collins was the youngest, and in the middle was AJ. And AJ was a tow-headed young man, probably between 10 and 12, when I was blessed to be really a pseudo part of this family. When I was just 22, I went to grad school at the University of Mississippi, pursuing a degree in English. And one of the reasons that I chose the University of Mississippi is that my parents already had a very good, strong relationship with Alan and Ann Cochet. Alan served as the pastor of the local Presbyterian PCA church there, and they took me in. They took me in like their oldest son, and they just loved me. And so in some ways, AJ and I were brothers, although, of course, we had that great gap. But that didn't keep us from having fun together. Some of my favorite memories of those days at Ole Miss took place in the garage of the church manse. The manse was nice as manses go, and it had this garage that had kind of a cathedral ceiling and no door. I'm not sure why, but it did, and because it had the cathedral ceiling, the Cochets had managed to put up a basketball hoop inside the garage. Now, I don't think it was set at, well, in fact, I'm sure it wasn't set at legal height. It was probably somewhere around 8.5 feet. If it had been legal height, it probably would have been too close to the roof. But at 8 feet, it was a rare thing indeed for the ball to ever hit the ceiling when you were taking a shot. But we spent just hours and hours and hours, typically the 3 of us, Alan, AJ, and me, typically me and AJ, taking on Alan. Now, Alan was a very gentle, sweet man who, you wouldn't know it, but he was quite an athlete. And in fact, he attended the University of Miami on a basketball scholarship. So this mild-mannered Presbyterian pastor could shoot the lights out And he just had this uncanny ability that if you gave him an inch, he could just take the jump shot right over you. If you didn't give him an inch, he was past you and getting the layup. Well, AJ and I, we played a lot of 2-on-1 against his dad, and sometimes his dad might be busy or worn out because, he wasn't as young as we were. And so AJ and I just had time together playing basketball out in the garage and practicing our dunks on this short hoop. And I don't know. He was just a delightful young man. I've been blessed with the opportunity to spend a little bit of time with him since he has become a full-grown man, and I've enjoyed that as well. But, when I think back, I didn't have a lot of male friends during that time at Ole Miss. I've mentioned one of them, my friend Carson Sensing, but I didn't have a lot of friends. And so AJ was just, that friend that we could talk about sports, we could play sports, we could, have a snowball fight. And so I'm grateful for him. I'm grateful for his friendship. I'm grateful that the family, not just the parents, but the kids, welcomed me into their home. It was just a real gospel experience for me to be welcomed into this home and to be so well loved by the whole family. AJ, I hope that I can track you down so that you can hear this. I still I can hear your voice. I can hear your accent. I can hear Miss Lenny talking about you and your sisters. And I miss you. I'm grateful for you. I love you and your family. And the rest of you, please, once again, I'm still waiting to get the very first report. I can't believe none of you've done this. Maybe you hate this segment. I don't know. I love it. But make this a habit. Go reach out to an old friend. Don't have to record. You can write them, send them an email, and tell me how it goes. I would love to hear from you. And if you are willing, I'd love to share with the rest of our listeners how your experience went. AJ, I hope we'll see you again. Have you ever wondered why it is that we, that is all of us, why are we so susceptible to error? Well, I want to start with stupid pride. The doctrine of total depravity affirms, among other things, that the impact of the fall hits us on all fronts. It is not just that our wills are fallen, but every faculty we possess, including our faculty of thinking. We err in our thinking because we are the children of Adam. While I'm willing to concede that it is possible to err without falling into sin, I would argue, on the other hand, that errors are a fruit of sin. I don't confess before the Lord when I stumble during a recording, but I believe I would not be prone to stumble like that had I not been born a sinner. This does not mean, of course, that to be a non-sinner makes one omniscient or omnicompetent. There is, after all, a great difference between not knowing everything and knowing what just isn't so. That we can err without falling into sin, however, doesn't mean that sin never contributes to our errors. In fact, I suspect our sin impacts our thinking far more than we like to confess, in part because we don't like to confess. We not only don't like to confess doing wrong, we don't like to confess being wrong. We not only don't want to confess doing wrong, we don't like to confess being wrong. To acknowledge error, even if that error is not in itself sinful, hurts us right where it counts, in our pride. Too often, we fall into error by believing what we want to believe. We stay in that error. We double down when we refuse to acknowledge that we were wrong in the first place. This, friends, this afflicts us not just individually, but corporately. That is, I not only want to be right, but want to be in the right crowd. We're a tribal people, and are quick to not only believe what our tribe believes, but to believe what other tribes believe is not just wrong, but stupid. It's one thing to admit I was wrong about this or that. It's another to admit that not only was I wrong, but so were my ancestors, my heroes, all those closest to me. If the problem is pride, and it is, then the solution is humility. We are not called to a skepticism disguised as humility, where we refuse to make any assertions, where we proudly claim to know nothing can be known. Instead, we're called to be bold about the truth and humble about ourselves. We're called to not conflate the Scripture itself and our understanding of it. We're called to listen like children and to check like Bereans. Jesus has promised us that the Spirit will lead us into all truth. John 16:13. This must not lead us to affirm that we now have all truth. If he is leading us there, it must mean that we're not there yet. If we insist that we have already arrived, we won't move, and we'll end up planting ourselves right in our ignorance. His word is truth. It tells us that we yet struggle with sin in our hearts and in our minds. He, however, has promised to conquer all his and our enemies, including our foolish pride. He is washing us with his word, and we have been promised he will finish what he has begun in us. You've been listening to the Jesus Changes Everything podcast, a production of Dunamis Fellowship, the teaching outreach of Dr. R.C. Sproul Jr. If you've enjoyed this podcast, we encourage you to subscribe, which you can do at all the usual outlets, to tell your friends, and to spread the word. To learn more about the work of Dunamis Fellowship, please visit rcsproulJR.com. And join us next time on Jesus Changes Everything.